Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and here's some more news, this time for the 3rd of March, 2023. About to say 2002. I'm like, that's not the right year. Anyway, let's pull this up here. Let's start with some world news. In Colombia, 2 dead, dozens of police held hostage in Colombia in protest against an oil company. See if I can get up closer to read this. My eyeballs suck. Anyway, police sit while officials from Colombia's human rights ombudsman speak with demonstrators who, according to authorities, belong to rural and indigenous communities and are demanding that oil company Emerald Energy build roads in San Vicente del Caguan, Colombia. I think, yeah, this is the one where the company's trying to build roads through the indigenous lands and stuff. And indigenous people are like, no, 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 no. Okay. Anyway, police officer and a civilian were killed during violent protests in Colombia's Caqueta province on Thursday, and 79 officers and 9 oil field workers were taken hostage by members of rural communities, the government said. The violence erupted in part of the San Vicente del Caguan municipality, where members of rural and indigenous communities blocked access to an oil field and set a fire, national police said, to demand Emerald Energy help fix roads. President Gustavo Petro, who ordered defense and interior officials to the region, decried the killings on Twitter. We have a popular movement which, by its exclusion and influence of groups which want to destroy the government and subsume Colombia in war, has ended up murdering a young policeman, he said. The Attorney General's office should investigate the killings while the Red Cross should attend to those being held hostage, he said. Maybe talk to the people, the indigenous people. Talk, sit down, talk with them, say, okay, we need to decide what are our sticking points here, where we're having issues. And work to hash it out. There's so little actual peace anymore. From Le Monde. Le Monde. Russia reports fighting on its territory for the first time. A unit of Russian volunteers fighting for Kiev claimed responsibility for an attack on 2 villages in Russian Bryansk region, a few hundred meters from the Ukrainian border, on Thursday. This didn't have to happen, but Russia was so determined to march in there and take territory because it felt it was its destiny to rebuild the mighty USSR. Nearly 24 hours after the incursion of fighters from Ukraine into Russian territory on Thursday, March the 2nd, there was no footage of the ensuing fighting or its aftermath. This fresh episode in the war between the two countries remains shrouded by considerable confusion, one that is typical of military operations, but also because of the opacity of the Russian communications, which is reinforced by inevitable suspicions of manipulation. Yeah. You know, you started a war that was unpopular. People didn't want it in your own country. They were fleeing to get out. It was unnecessary to go into Ukraine and just to try to push them around to take more territory. And what has it brought you? War upon your own country's lands. Turmoil, strife. It's your fault, Putin. You could have ignored this and been like, I'm not going to attack them. But now, this is from USA Today. Russia will be out of military tools by spring, Ukraine's top military spy says. That on its own is dubious. But when you pair it with a second story, this from Yahoo News, Russian oligarch warns his country could be broke by 2024. Then you also pair it with this, where the fighting has taken place in now starting to take place in Russia. Things aren't looking good for Russia itself. They started a war that and screwed themselves over with it. Putin can, fight for, push for peace, but he's so egotistical, he won't do it. His ego would never allow it. Never. But that's world news. Let's look at some political things going on. I watched some videos of this. Jon Stewart expertly corners pro-gun Republican. You don't give a flying F about children dying. Yeah, he just makes that gun nut look like a complete imbecile. And the guy says, with more guns, we'd be safer. And I'm thinking, and Stewart kind of asks this. He says, all right, at what point do we hit that where we have enough guns? Because there's 400 billion guns in a country of 350 million, or 400 million guns in a country of 350 million people. Is it when we hit a billion, or what is that number that we hit where everything becomes completely safe? Oh goodness. And Stewart tries to compare it with voting, and the guy's like, he tries everything not to say register to vote, because he says, when you decide you want to vote, what do you do? And the guy just tries to push everything else because he knows Stewart's wanting him to say register to vote because he's saying we need a firearm registry in the U.S. But the lawmaker's like, no, that infringes on rights. Yeah, the registry would allow you to have much more effective background checks, according to Stewart. I don't understand why you won't just admit that you're making it harder for police to manage the streets by allowing all these guns to go out without permits, without checks, and without background stuff. Why can't you just stand by that? Because that's not what I'm doing, Dom responded. I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms. Yeah, and so this is uh, Stewart counters by noting that Americans have to register in order to have voting rights. So you have to register for a right. Is that an infringement? And then the guy responds, does the right to vote say shall not be infringed because of what the Second Amendment says? And so Stewart's like, oh, so this is just a semantic argument. But Dom tries to answer back quick. No, 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 it's not. uh, yeah, it's ridiculous. The guy just threw up some of the stupidest stuff. And Stewart's like, this is common sense stuff. It's not stuff you should be going, oh, to have people register to have a firearm is not preventing, is not saying we're going to prevent everybody from having guns. It's not the same thing. Yeah. He also points out, says, because many of these Republicans are the same ones who want to protect kids from drag shows. But that's not what kills the most kids in America. Shoot, barely, I don't think it even kills any kids. But guns do kill. They are the highest level of murder rate for young adults is gun. For death is guns. Whether it's murder, whether it's suicide, it's guns. Another story. The far right's culture wars are just a distraction so oligarchs can keep looting the working class. This is from Common Sense or commondreams.org. Yeah, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene don't just emerge out of nothing. There's a hand above these puppets, feeding their bellies and pulling their strings. And I agree. This stupidity of culture war they push is just so the rich can get richer. I cry, oh, it's to protect kids. No, no, it's not. So stupid. You look at a lot of the stories on right wing news. They talk about stuff like Dr. Seuss, M&M's candies. Oh, it is not up to all standards. Yeah, they need to be up to all standards. I'm sorry, what? What? Yeah, she's been calling for an American divorce. Apparently, she sees herself as a modern day John C. Calhoun, a demagogue who serves the interests of the white oligarch class and in turn receives their support and the power and wealth that come with it. She started a secession propaganda campaign much like Calhoun and his buddies, and when he left the White House as vice president in 1833, the same year England outlawed slavery on British territory plantations, and talk of abolition in the U.S. kicked into high gear. It took Calhoun and his fellow traitors about 25 years to convince enough people in the South to go to war against America and try to replace our democracy with a fascist, race based oligarchy. Yeah, Civil War. You know, I love the South. There's a lot of beauty here, a lot of great things. But the Confederacy is not one. You know, I do a lot of videos on historical incidents and things. And I often say, history is not pretty. There's a lot of scars, a lot of bruises, a lot of wounds. You know, it is not a pretty thing necessarily to look at that you go, oh, it's so wonderful. No. There are moments where you're like, that's a great thing. This is something to be proud of. But there's others that people try to ignore everything else and just say, well, this is, or they'll basically lie to make a case that they're trying to make. But last story for tonight from The Guardian. Leaked audio reveals U.S. rail workers were told to skip inspections as the Ohio crash prompts scrutiny on the industry. Employee says manager told her to stop marking cars for repair as the Ohio derailment brings a hard look at the industry's record of blocking safety rules. Yep. In leaked audio heard by The Guardian, a manager for one of the U.S.'s largest rail companies can be heard explaining to a former carman that they should stop tagging rail cars for broken bearings. The manager says doing so delays other cargo. Like I said, this is for many of these corporate monsters. It's profits over people. They don't care what it does to others. Those in charge are just like, give me money. That's all I want. And yeah, this is why we have more inequality than the original Gilded Age. We are in a second Gilded Age. You know, what do I know just from studying history and politics and everything else? You know, I clearly I know not a damn thing of what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'll go ahead and end this episode here. It's already been 20 minutes. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.